talking about you. When we were feeling the energy of this space over here, there used to be a giant oak tree, which Flower had shared back in the day that had the most evolved tree deva presence was at this oak tree. It was the most evolved presence on the grounds from the nature kingdom. And about 2.5 years ago, in about 30 days, it went from health to gone. So it was kind of a, I don't know how to say it, for those of us that have been coming to Questhaven, it was like one of our brothers. I kind of leave it as the best way I can say it. And it happened so quick. And we had just gone on about a 5 or 6 year drought here, as many of you probably even heard about. If you're in the area, you know. And then the big rains came. So the rains were even coming as like life was coming and it was going. So it was a very interesting, energetic experience. And as often, at least the way my sensitivity or each of us goes, we get gleanings from different insights from everybody. And this is the idea of a community. And someone was standing there and said, wouldn't it be nice if there's a way for people to learn a little bit about flower? And that's where you see the interpretive signs. And I said, that struck a chord energetically with me. And then someone suggested a fountain, and that struck a chord. And long story short, we finally got to springs and things. And I'll just share briefly that the 3 pools for Questhaven represent the Master's blessings coming here, which we don't talk too much about, but you guys are very comfortable with that concept of the Ascended Masters. But we feel Questhaven is their work, and so they talk about the energies that come through this place that they're sending and directing as peace, reverence, and spiritual love. So you notice 3 separate pools. Peace is the first one. We don't write this down there, so it's just kind of energetically for people to pick up on. Reverence, the second one, and spiritual love, the biggest. And notice they're successfully getting larger as they're hopefully energetically speaking to people that are quietly coming. So as that was going on, you'll notice the second station up there, it's where the springs are coming forth out of the water, or out of the ground. So we picture that as like the start, the living waters that are coming, the manna from heaven, the living waters that are coming from the great ones in our Lord Christ to supply all of us ultimately in this world. And notice that fills all 3 streams, or all 3 pools. And at that particular station is the Christ, I guess, interpretive sign. And it has you angle this way a little bit. So everything was purposed. And the idea for at least us is to understand who this Christ is for us, as we would say that every planet has a Christ, every evolving life that is developed has a Christ, an officiant that is ultimately in charge of the spiritual awakening, shall we say, of all life. So we say that was his function of our Christ for this planet, and that we've earned someone from our humanity is a tremendous thing, because I'm sure as you all discuss, there are certainly masters and ascended from our path, but we get a lot of loners from different parts, right? So to be able to have a Christ that we've earned, from our path, and that has been one of us, is a tremendous, tremendous thing. So that's what that sign is trying to draw people. We go very appetizer, very slowly with a lot of people at first, just to speak to their soul, shall we say. And if they're awakened or not, it kind of allows that instead of like pouncing on them energetically. So when that started developing, I knew we used to have a statue here for those that have come for a long time. It was of a patron that was here a long time ago. Flower wasn't really big on statues, but she was one that would always kind of, when Flower was going on a big trip or a tour, she would stand right here as Flower was going out, and she would say, take the light, everything you've had here, but take the light to be with you, and go in that way. So it was a blessing. And so that was what this original statue was, of this person kind of giving that blessing as everybody is leaving the grounds to take the light that all of us receive. And but that person lived a long time ago. It kind of looked like Flower, so it created all kinds of physical conflict, shall we say, energetically. So I knew it was time to have Christ bring that blessing, and it's even more. And what it evolved to be, and what you're going to hear it a little bit today, is what we're calling the Great I Am. And I'll talk about at least our understanding of the I Am, or Flower is what she shared. So long story short of finding this statue is you can go to garden stores and find pre-manufactured and all that, but Lori had shared with me a picture of a face which are very similar or unique, and there comes Lori right on cue. A face of a statue by an artist that I hadn't known. Her name is Angela Johnson, and if you forget that, her name is actually on the back of the thing, Angela Johnson. She was an aspiring opera singer in the Mormon Tabernacle environment and everything, and around the age of 30, she more or less realized, due to some things that were happening with her voice, that path was changing. And that was her whole life. That was all she had thought about doing. So in her therapy of dealing with this suffering and this change, she started working with clay. And she just was intuitively feeling, and when she finished, she saw herself created, and this beginning point of transformation, so we say, coming out of that chrysalis of that sorrow of new life. And all of a sudden she realized she had this gift. And her focus, interesting, is Christ. And obviously with her faith, but it's Christ. That's what she sculpts. She has done some busts, if you're baseball fans, of Bonds and a few other things like that. So she has been commissioned. George Washington. She's done a few other things, but it's really Christ. And I was telling several of your group that she was commissioned, which was kind of really a big thing, because even in Utah, this is very close to Salt Lake City, in a little suburb of that called Lehi. And there's a gardens called Ashton Gardens, which is like this huge acreage with like a Chinese area, pools, a koi, and different focuses. She was commissioned by this woman that was endowing it. She had lost her husband and had this money and wanted to start this, to do biblical scenes with Christ. And so she has 12 biblical and then one Mormon in this small space. But not to go through the specifics, but to give you the idea of a woman being accepted with a board that was mostly masculine, that was saying, well, we can't do something religious. This is because these are gardens that are public. These are not, they're commercially public. So they didn't want to tie or affiliate with anything. So there was some huge things to descend this archetype that was coming for them. And I've been several times, and it is a real spiritual experience of even how these came about. They are bronze. So that just gives you a little bit about her. And of course, as you know, whenever you come to the spiritual journey, there's a million no's, there's a million, you can't do this, that's the way that, God checks our sincerity. And it's a way that we are alchemy fashioned, in a sense. So it's about perseverance. If it was all that easy and all the doors opened all the time, we'd just stay in heaven, wouldn't we? we wouldn't have to come down to this earth to meet what earth gives us. But it was really a miracle how that even garden was funded, because that's where the funds were coming from to get it politically to be able to create for Christ. And it's this stunning, stunning gardens. And so there you won't just find 13 Christs, you'll find 13 scenes with Christ, even an ascended Christ where he's off the ground. It's just a beautiful experience. And one of my favorite is the tomb of Lazarus, because they use one of the things that attracted me to her when I, now in today's age of social media, when I saw that picture of her, I said, well, let me go to her website, and I dropped a little hello. Immediately we're talking. It was like I'm going to the artist and not some group that's protecting her or something like that. And we had a wonderful conversation of the I am and this concept, and she was very excited about it. So she uses nature. She said, where did Christ meet people? Out in nature. And so she embraced that idea, which I was like, oh. So the beauty of the nature there at this place, like in Lazarus' tomb, they use rocks and things. So you can, and with a sculpting, they encourage you to go in it. So it's not something to sit back and just, oh, that's a beautiful painting or something. No, you can touch Christ. You can walk amongst it. You can look at it from different views. And so I share all that because that's what we've done here. We've made a mindfulness walk around Christ with different stations of attunement. And if you have time, I encourage you just gently doing that, because each view gives a different perspective. The idea is maybe we can get a different perspective on whatever we're pondering in life, but to see it, because the art is obviously three-dimensional, so it's transcendent. And with bronze, the detail, if you look at his toes, for example, it's meant to, you know, like marble, you'd be looking at orbs, right? Not in the eyes. No, this statue honestly was created for us, for an experience. Some people say, well, his head's down as I'm going back. And I said, you haven't approached Christ, have you? It's welcoming you to come, not just say, hey, see you later. It's inviting. And that's what the I am is. So you're going to see the I am statements from the Bible, from the book of John. And I would just want to share briefly before we go into prayer about that is, Flowers said, whenever Christ, as Jesus, was summoning the I am, he was summoning from the Adonaic region within himself, the God within, to come forth. So whenever he said I am, he's speaking from the God within him. And she said he did that oftentimes. And now it's our turn to follow his. And while we are not where he was necessarily, it's summoning that I am within us. So that's what this mindful walk, which again we don't advertise, but I want to let you know, it's to summon that God within us and to awaken to that by saying the same call notes of the I am. We chose not to put the biblical resources down there because I didn't want anything else to ground it. Just let the words vibrate from the past to today and on, because I feel like they're timeless. And a lot of orthodoxy and different things and structure, they go very literal on the words. These are mystical words. They're not for you to diagnose them completely up there. And so we, in our understanding, like I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am. This doesn't mean that you only have to, so for example, we would say an interpretation esoterically from that. Think of now reincarnation and our evolving souls. I am the way. He's like that pinnacle. He's talking about mastering ourselves. It's talking about perfecting and being on that. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Whether you're Hindu, whether you're Christian, whether you're Buddhist, that's where we get wrong, is when we start to interpret it, well, then you have to follow a specific. No, he is that. And as you climb in that, there's this merging of light and the separation between all those borders which we tend to put on religion just disappear. And we come together with Christ. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Even if you say no one gets unto God but through me, it's all accurate if you think of it more mystically and more from a spirit standpoint, the way. I share often that Gandhi, you know, a wonderful great soul, he carried a picture with Jesus around. And he says, I love your Jesus or your Christ. It's your Christians I'm not so sure about, you know. And it's a lovely expression because he gets it. He gets it. He's up that ladder a little bit, and he's getting that glimpses of what it is, and it's all ultimately one, and there our Christ is. So we would say that Christ is, you might think of it like a university, kind of like the head of the office. This isn't about anything. He's directing, and they all have their roles. So even Lord Buddha has a responsibility for the enlightenment of all of us, and they have these different functions, but the Christ office is kind of the dispensation of the Christos, and his whole life as Jesus, he was learning to fashion that. I mean, really think about that. He was learning to wield that light while physically here on the ground, anchoring it and doing. So we have a great, shall we say, honoring to this one who did that so sacrificially while on earth and humbly, revealing for each of us the way. So I'm gonna have a prayer, and then I encourage each of you. I will be gently moving up to choir, but I encourage you all, and just in that prayerful, to come. The spot, you'll know the spot when you get there, and look into his eyes. Now I'll just caution you, and this is a great caution. So it's wonderful. Is there will be lots of love. This is a gently smiling Christ, one of the few statues of Christ smiling. Most looks very serious or pain. But whenever I go before Christ, I open myself up, and it causes you to ask something, because it's not always easy. If it were easy, again, we wouldn't be here. And he will look into, and the most patience, you got to understand, Christ is so patient and loves us right where we are. Loves us right where we are. But he encourages us where we're going. And there's the uncomfortableness a little bit. You will start seeing the gap of where you want to be and where we are. And it stirs. So I share that because that's an important, beautiful thing to do. Because just like, a mother's love, in a sense, if we're just love where we are, we don't move forward. So they're always encouraging you for more. And Flower said, whenever you look into her eyes or pictures, she would say to you, and this is my memory of it, not the exact quote, there is so much more above you. Keep climbing. Keep soaring, because there's so much more to see. And I feel like that message will come loud and clear through your experience today. So let us go into that special place now, and we know that physically there may be cars that people are heading to their own spiritual experiences this morning.
Do you mind if we hold these?
Yeah, that'd be fine. We can even include price if you want.
Oh, yeah.
So with this outer world beauty that is going on around us in procession, we seek an inner experience this day, a gathering on high. And so to thee, O Mother, Father, God, presence, beloved Lord Emmanuel, who is the living Christ, our elder brother, to the Holy Spirit and Spirit of grace and mercy, to all those perfected and ascended in thee, O God, angelic and human, we bring forth the God within us, to with the great I am, each of us can begin to see where we are going on the path, to know that we are not just the physical beings here, but we are soulic spirits from God, rising to reveal God in its deepest way here in this plane of earth. May we so be blessed. May we so be received, and our eyes made open. In and through thy name, O Christ, I am with thee. Amen.
Amen.
You want?
So we can have a line if we like.
I'm going to take away some of the spider webs. You don't have any of those? All creatures love him.